The rose. Many people would consider it the world's favorite flower since the dawn of history, a flower that has inspired countless legends, myths, and romantic encounters. What if I told you the stunning rose you see here will never wilt, dry up, or shed its petals? This rose is a permanent rose, one of the many outstanding permanent botanical products from Windward International. Welcome to a behind-the-scenes look at the artistry and process involved in manufacturing the world's most realistic permanent botanicals, the floral products from Windward International. In our visit to the factory located outside of Wuxi in China, we'll get to see step by step the creation of one of their signature flowers, the rose. We'll start with cutting the fabric into the shapes of the petals of the flower. Each petal has its own shape and size, of course, so die cutting tools for each petal type are created to use in this process. Layers of fabric are placed on the cutting table, and the tool is used to cut out as many petals at a time as there are layers of fabric. Here we see that several different sized petals are all being cut from the same batch of fabric, and here's a closer look at the die cutting tools. You can see each tool and the petal it cuts. Now that we've got some petals to work with, they're brought in for the initial coloring part of the process. The edges of the petals are all going to get the same color, so the dye is applied to the whole stack at once. The stack of dried petals is then placed into the spin dryer, and moisture is removed from the petals. The petals need more than one color of dye to be applied, and that's what's happening here. Again, the spin dryer is used to remove moisture and embed the color into the petals. Once the petals have received their initial dye, they are gathered together on trays. You can see here that these are groups of 3 petals still held together in the middle to make it easier to handle them. The petals are placed into a special steamer for steaming the dye into the fabric. This machine is used to stamp the petal down, and the pressure creates the shape and texture onto the fabric using the mold form that's inside. As you can see here, only one petal can be shaped at a time. Next up, curling the edges of the petals. In nature, flower petals aren't uniformly flat like our fabric would be along the edges if we didn't take the time to use this part of our process. You can see here that each petal is curled along the edge by hand to make it look just like flower petals in nature. We've edited this video so it wouldn't be too long, so you're not seeing this in real time. It actually takes about 60 seconds to fully curl the edges of a large petal. When you do the math, a single rose flower head can have up to 60 petals. This part of the process represents about an hour for just one flower head. Now that the petals are dyed, dried, shaped, and curled on their edges, we're ready to assemble the flower head. Not only is each petal glued into place by hand, you have to know which petal goes where. As you can see here, this is also a very time-consuming part of the process. But as with the curling step, it has to be done by hand to get the realism that we're looking for in the finished flower. The flower head is finally in its finished shape. All the petals, they're in place, and it's looking beautiful. But we're not done yet. Each of our highly skilled finishing painters is truly an artist, and you'll get an example of that here. Now it's time for the finishing touches, painting by hand every part of the flower that needs color added to give it realism and to fill it with what we call the spirit of the flower. It's impossible to get this level of artistry and realism cranked out by machine. It is the human touch of our artists that gives each flower its spirit. Here it is, the finished flower head. Nice job, beautifully done, and she's happy with how it turned out. The final step is putting the flower head on its stem, adding the foliage. As you can see here, the leaves are added to the stem by hand. We use natural stems. They're also hand painted. The calyx is inserted on the top of the stem, and then the flower head is put in place. When we're done with this step, we've got a permanent rose that looks just like a fresh one, with the beauty and spirit of the flower. As we've taken you through the major steps in the manufacturing process of the world's finest botanicals, we've been focusing on the rose, but we do many other types of flowers. Let's take a look at a couple of other examples: a calla lily and a tulip, both hand-painted. Now that you've had a close look at the manufacturing process, when you take a look at these finished designs, you'll have an even better understanding for what went into them. Enjoy. We use beauty, realism, and artistry to create every one of our flowers in order to bring beauty and happiness into people's homes. That's why we do what we do. Thanks for watching.